The workshop is hosted by NDB in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance of the People's Republic of China. We are very honored to have distinguished guests and speakers from our member countries, joined by our senior management and our staff. The workshop will shed light on how we will transform the visions in our second general strategy into realities and actions. We will have an opening session, 2 panels, and a closing session. Panel 1 will focus on mobilizing resources for sustainable development, and panel 2 on expanding development impact. With this, I'd like to welcome our Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Zhou Qiangwu, as the moderator for the opening session and panel 1. VP Zhou, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Zhuang, for the introduction. Your Excellency, Minister Liu Kun, Your Excellency, Vice Minister Dong Wei, Your Excellency, Ambassador Ali El-Dahari, Your Excellency, Ambassador Assam, once again, Mohammed Hanifi, and also my NDB fellow management, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and perhaps good afternoon, good evening to certain people who have been joining virtually. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this very important workshop in this great NDB headquarters building. In particular, in this very beautiful season here in Shanghai. As one of the official events under China's 2022 BRICS chairship, this is the first ever high-level workshop held in our NDB permanent headquarters since the handover from Shanghai 1 year ago. I would like to take this chance to once again thank those who had the vision to make Shanghai the home of NDB, as well as those who have contributed to the timely delivery of this fantastic building. In the 14th BRICS Summit Beijing Declaration, our leaders recognized the bank's progress and encouraged us to follow the member-led and the member-driven principle to mobilize financing from diversified resources to enhance innovation and knowledge exchange to assist our member countries in achieving sustainable development and to further to improve efficiency and effectiveness in fulfilling our mandate with the aim to be a premier multilateral development institution. The new strategy is such a document that will be guiding NDB, our bank, through the cycle of 2022 to 2026 to ensure that the vision of the leaders will be translated into actions and reality. Taking this opportunity, I would like to thank those, both internally and externally, at different levels, including the Board of Governors, who offer their insights and visions in making this document. The new 5-year strategy seeks to elevate NDB to a higher standard of operational excellence and strengthen the bank's development impact. This workshop offers the best occasion to explore how these objectives will be materialized, particularly in relation to the themes we are focused on today, to resource mobilization and impact maximization. I'm pleased to let you know that today we have over 100 participants. That's something excluding our NDB staff joining in person, with some other hundreds joining virtually. Among them, we have distinguished diplomats, like you sitting here, senior government officials, fellow MDB colleagues, prominent scholars, NDB clients and partners, and also our dear friends from media. Ladies and gentlemen, please now join me in welcoming His Excellency NDB's Governor of China, Minister of Finance of China, Mr. Liu Kun, for his opening remarks.
尊敬的特罗耶行长，各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们，大家上午好。很高兴参加新开发银行新总体战略研讨会。首先，我谨代表中国财政部对研讨会的召开表示祝贺，并向长期关注和支持新开发银行发展的各界朋友表示衷心的感谢。新开发银行成立7年来，在业务运营、知识合作、机制建设和扩延等方面取得丰硕成果，已成为金砖国家合作的标志性成果和重要平台。中方作为2022年金砖国家主席国，积极推动将新开发银行议题纳入峰会成果，着力放大新开发银行影响力。本次研讨会作为2022年金砖国家合作系列会议之一，将围绕新开发银行新总体战略的主题，扩大发展融资，构建可持续未来展开讨论，对于银行的长期发展具有重要的意义，也是对外展示金砖国家财经合作强劲活力的重要窗口。中国政府一贯重视并支持新开发银行建设和发展。习近平主席在今年6月23日金砖国家领导人第14次会晤时指出，要支持新开发银行做大做强，稳步吸收新成员。当前，世界百年未有之大变局加速演进，全球发展进入新的动荡变革期。作为新兴市场和发展中国家主导的多边开发银行，新开发银行践行多边主义，尊重发展多样性，日益成为推动全球治理体系变革的重要力量。面对新形势，我们要坚定信心，携手努力，以落实新总体战略为契机，坚定支持新开发银行做大做强，将开放、包容、合作、共赢的金砖精神不断发扬光大。 进入新的总体战略期，新开发银行应坚守使命担当，以服务新兴市场和发展中国家为己任，支持成员国落实联合国2030年可持续发展议程，积极寻求自身发展战略与成员国发展重点的契合点，在助力新兴市场和发展中国家应对风险挑战，实现绿色可持续发展中发挥中坚作用。应坚持开放包容，稳步持续推进扩员工作，巩固和拓展南南合作，提升银行的感召力和影响力，同时注重与金砖国家扩员的协同，增强新兴市场和发展中国家在全球治理体系中的代表性和发言权，践行真正的多边主义，打造多边合作的金砖样板。应坚持高标准引领，不断优化内部治理，构建开放、包容、多元、合作、专业的机构文化，培育和践行一个团队理念，激发最大正效能，努力打造21世纪新型多边开发机构，为促进各国可持续发展发挥更大的作用。女士们、先生们、朋友们，中国将坚持以中国式现代化实现中华民族伟大复兴，继续积极推动构建人类命运共同体，以中国新发展给世界带来新机遇，为世界和平与发展和人类文明进步贡献智慧和力量。作为新开发银行的股东国和总部东道国，中方将一如既往地为新开发银行发展提供有力支持和优质的服务，并愿与各方一道，将新开发银行建设成为21世纪的新型多边开发机构，助力各成员国可持续发展。最后，预祝本次研讨会圆满成功。
Thank you, Your Excellency, Minister Liu, for the very insightful remarks and the valuable guidance. We, NDB, will definitely take the implementation of this new strategy as an opportunity to make resolute efforts to support great development of NDB and carry forward the BRICS spirit of openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's welcome President of NDB, my dear colleague, Mr. Marcos Choiho, to deliver his opening remark. Let's welcome.
Your Excellency Minister Liu Kung, Your Excellency Vice Minister Wang Dongwei, Your Excellency Ambassador Ali Al-Dakheli, Your Excellency Ambassador Hassan Mohammed Hanafi, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. 1 year ago, when we were handed over this great new development bank headquarters building, I told participants that what makes the construction so special is that it's built upon the passion for development, the love of development. Today, It is our great honor to host this workshop in collaboration with China's Ministry of Finance so that we can discuss the General Strategy 2022-2026. The document guides us on how to translate our passion and love of development into tangible results. Our strategic direction is to become a leading provider of solutions for infrastructure and development for emerging market economies and developing countries. We are here today to explore ways on how we can achieve this all together. Many of you have witnessed the established and trajectory of NDB over the past 7 years, and we have achieved some important milestones. We have approved more than $30 billion for infrastructure projects. We have initiated a process of membership expansion. We have a talented team in place and a strong partnership network. As we speak, the world sees daunting challenges: climate risks, geopolitical tensions, technology disruptions, shifting demographics. But as we look towards the future, we can see that the NDB is expected to serve the development needs of more people in emerging countries, where the combined output is expected to account for more than 60% of global GDP when we conclude the strategy cycle in 2026. Between 2021 and 2030, infrastructure requirements in the developing world will be about $39 trillion, of which there is going to be a projected gap of nearly 12 trillion. In navigating such challenging landscapes, we formulated NDB's second general strategy with contributions from our member countries as well as many other stakeholders. Our strategy has three main pillars. First, by focusing on specific operation areas like clean energy, transportation, water, sanitation, but also social and digital infrastructure, we will streamline our efforts to deliver development across the board. We will keep on pursuing core development priorities of our member countries, particularly those that are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. As the concept of infrastructure evolves, we want to make sure that we can support projects that are climate and disaster resilient, technology enabled, and socially inclusive. We are there to deliver greater quality when it comes to infrastructure investment. Second, in order to support our operations, we're seeking to increase our presence in capital markets with innovative tools and catalyze additional resources from diversified sources, particularly from the private sector. Third, we need to build an ever stronger institution in order to achieve all of those goals. We will continue to attract and nurture talent. Talent is the most valuable asset of the new development bank. A greater emphasis on digital transformation will also enable us to deliver fast and customized services while streamlining the working processes. Innovation and knowledge will underline our operations and activities. And we will welcome more countries to join the new development bank in a gradual and balanced manner. Over the 2022-2026 period, we aim to maximize the development impact of every single project we finance. We intend to increase both local currency financing and non-sovereign operations to about 30% of total approvals, while setting our climate financing target at 40%. In order to create more space for mutual collaborations, we're also working together with other multilateral institutions so as to provide for more co-financing and learning and shared knowledge. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we at the New Development Bank are excited to embark on this new strategy cycle. We know that our noble objectives can only be achieved with your support and collaboration. Today, we're going to discuss in more depth how best to operationalize the strategy on all fronts. And we deeply appreciate your thoughts, your ideas, and your collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcus, for your very comprehensive remarks on the mission and vision of NDB, as well as their delivery. Your remark will also help to provide us a very good and a solid foundation for today's panel discussion. Dear colleagues, with this, I think let me close the opening session. Once again, thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now move to panel 1 with the theme of mobilizing resources for sustainable development. NDB aims to bolster our role as a catalyst of support for addressing the evolving infrastructure and sustainable development needs of our member countries. Over the new 5-year strategy cycle, the bank is to provide $30 billion in funding and to become an increasingly active player in mobilizing not only from public sectors, but private sectors, the resources. This panel will focus on possible initiatives and action plans that could be implemented by NDB to achieve its strategic objective. In this panel, we have the following very important and influential panelists. Mr. Wang Dongwei, Vice Minister of Finance of China. Mr. Anil Kishora, Vice President and Chief Risk Officer of NDB. Mr. Montezano, President of Brazilian Development Bank. Mr. Jonathan Wurzel, Director of McKinsey Global Institute, and also Professor Zhang Jun, Dean of School of Economics of Fudan University. We have Mr. Wang, Mr. Kishora, Mr. Montezano joining virtually, and we have Mr. Wurzel, Professor Zhang, here with us in person. Let's give them a warm welcome. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Wang Dongwei, Vice Minister of Finance of China, for his remark. Minister, yeah, thank you. The floor is yours.
谢谢主持人，各位来宾，大家上午好。非常高兴参加今天的研讨会。刚才我和大家一起共同聆听了刘昆部长和特洛约行长的开幕致辞。相信各位同我一样，从他们的精彩的致辞中深受启发和鼓舞。借此机会我就动员资源支持可持续发展这一主题与各位做一交流。作为金砖国家合作的标志性成果，新开发银行开业7年多来，实现稳健运营，并取得丰硕成果，得到了金砖国家领导人的充分肯定。今年6月23日，金砖国家领导人第14次会晤发布北京宣言，鼓励新开发银行坚持成员国主导、需求导向的原则，多渠道动员各类资源， 加强知识分享与创新，继续助力成员国实现可持续发展目标，进一步提高践行宗旨的效率和效力，努力打造领先的多边开发机构，这为新开发银行未来发展指明了方向。当前，新冠肺炎疫情吞噬全球多年发展成果，联合国2030年可持续发展议程落实的进程受阻，南北鸿沟继续拉大，粮食、能源安全危机频现。针对面临前所未有的挑战，新开发银行应以实施第2个5年总体战略为契机，坚守服务新兴市场和发展中国家的定位，稳步提升业务规模，支持成员国可持续发展，更好履行机构宗旨。在此，我愿分享3点看法：一是积极有为，有效回应成员国发展需求。新开发银行应充分发挥后发优势，创新发展理念和融资方式，拓宽投融资渠道，为成员国量身定制业务产品，并提供多样化服务，提高运营效率和有效性。在风险可控的前提下，拓展担保、股权投资、政府和社会资本合作业务，加大私人资本动员力度，更好满足成员国资金需求，扩大本地投融资规模，提高市场融资能力，提升机构研究能力，加强成员国经济运行监测，并提供政策建议，促进发展经验交流借鉴，打造新兴市场和发展中国家的知识银行。二是顺势而为，积极培育成员国发展新动能。新开发银行要顺应基础设施和可持续发展新趋势，助力成员国把握大数据、人工智能等新经济发展机遇，弥合数字鸿沟，重点支持5G、数据中心、云计算、人工智能等新型基础设施建设，提高绿色融资、智慧城市、社会基础设施等创新性、普惠性项目比重，助推新技术发展和应用，注重利用新型基础设施推动成员国间的贸易便利化和价值链融合，促进国际产能合作，增强全球产业链、供应链的稳定性，稳步推进创新领域的非主权业务，不予相关项目适当的风险容忍度，支持成员国释放创新潜力，共享发展成果。三是主动作为，努力营造有利于发展的国际环境。新开发银行应践行真正的多边主义，坚守新兴市场和发展中国家多边开发银行的定位，持续推动全球经济治理体系改革，提升新兴市场 和发展中国家的代表性和发言权，深入推动南南合作、三方合作和区域合作，进一步强化新兴市场和发展中国家合作平台作用，帮助成员国联合自强，促进共同发展。积极参与开放型世界经济体系建设，参与构建更加公正合理的全球治理体系和制度环境，为新兴市场和发展中国家可持续发展营造和平稳定、开放包容的国际发展环境。各位嘉宾，刚刚胜利闭幕的中国共产党第24全国代表大会，活化了中国未来发展的宏伟蓝图。今后5年是中国全面建设社会主义现代化国家开局起步的关键时期，也是新开发银行做大做强，向成为21世纪新型多边开发机构目标迈进的重要时间窗口。习近平主席在今年6月全球发展高层对话会上的讲话中指出，中国一直是发展中国家大家庭的一员，将继续支持联合国2030年可持续发展议程，加大对全球发展合作的资源投入，同各方携手推进重点领域合作，搭建国际发展知识经验交流平台。在此过程中，中国将一如既往地为新开发银行提供有力支持，并愿意各方一道推动落实全球发展倡议，积极支持银行为促进全球可持续发展发挥更大的作用。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Vice Minister Wang. Thank you, Dongwei. We are very much encouraged by your inspiring, visionary, and reassuring remarks. 您的3点建议，非常重要，对我们有很重要的指导意义。In particular, the 3 points you highlighted are very important to us. The NEB will be more proactive, effective, and more responsive to the development needs of our member countries. Now let me invite my dear colleague, Mr. Anil Kishore, VP CIO of NDB, who is also responsible for drafting this strategy, to share his view. Dear VP Anil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, VP Joe. Your Excellencies, esteemed panel members, participants, and colleagues, good morning. I'm honored and delighted to take part in this workshop. First of all, as the Vice President responsible for the bank's general strategy, I warmly acknowledge the guidance and kind words of support from our Honorable Governor and Minister of Finance of China. The direction set out by the Excellency will help us implement and achieve the goals under the bank's general strategy 2020-2026. Let me now jump straight into today's theme, as our President, in his opening remarks, has already highlighted the key components and direction of the bank's strategy. Emerging markets and developing countries or EMDCs as they are called, are crucial to a sustainable future for our planet and global prosperity. It is heartening that significant progress has been made on infra spending by EMDCs. Investments reached USD 21 trillion during the past decade, accounting for 7.2% of their GDP. And this is expected to increase substantially in terms of absolute dollars as well as percent of GDP. While funding from commercial banks has surged, the resources provided by the development banks have stayed relatively constant. MDBs are an important development partner of member countries in both normal times and periods of extraordinary shocks. What can we, the development banks, do to further scale up development finance? I would like to make 3 points. First, there is an inbuilt limit up to which MDBs can leverage their capital. External rating requirements and prudence cap the leverage. The report of the independent panel on capital adequacy framework review under the G20 umbrella has met certain recommendations to increase the multilateral development bank's lending capacity. Any sharp increase in new lending may, however, require additional capital. Considering the prevailing fiscal position across countries, it is probably difficult to look for frequent recapitalizations. This leads me to my second point. There is no choice but to focus on mobilizing private capital, an area where all MDBs have much more work to do. NDB General Strategy 2020-2026 emphasized private capital mobilization. One of the barriers to private investments flowing into infrastructure projects is the perceived credit quality and uncertainties around project revenues and execution risks. How do we mitigate that? My third and last point, I would like to add here regarding the mitigation possibilities. Working with multilateral insurance providers like MIGA and other agencies that extend bilateral guarantees, it is time we work out mechanisms to provide credit enhancements. If we can secure investment grade ratings for the projects, private money will flow in. This will also call for some good amount of planning and action to put in place project monitoring and reporting arrangements that are more robust than what we have today. As we all know, private investors prefer frequent and regular reporting and comprehensive disclosures. That is an area that certainly requires more work and collaboration between the stakeholders. My third and last point is in the context of the current market conditions, when both inflation and interest rates are headed north. Rising interest rates dent investors' appetite for equity. Inflation makes fixed income bonds look unattractive. With every issuance at a higher yield, existing bond prices take a knock. Can projects be funded by issuing instruments that are partially or fully inflation adjusted? Sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, and other long-term mainstream infra players may find such opportunities pretty attractive. Now, a few words about local currency financing. By the end of Q2 2022, 22% of NDB's cumulative approvals were denominated in national currencies of member countries. Notably, 72% of the bank's cumulative approvals for projects in China were denominated in RMB. Infra projects typically have their revenues in local currencies, and it makes sense to fund them via local currency debt. unhedged exchange risks can play havoc with project viability or borrowers' repayment capacity. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of its strategy implementation, NDB has to work on a range of fronts, from local currency capabilities to co-financing and syndicated loans to guarantees and credit enhancements. The bank may need to gradually augment its product offerings as not only a finance provider, but also as a risk mitigator. In that role, we may need to build our own deal structuring capabilities and linkages with key players like insurers, investment banks, project sponsors, and private investors to deliver risk mitigating options and favorable credit rating outcomes. We'll also need to directly reach out to climate sensitive investors to build partnerships to jointly pursue climate goal ambitions. In all these efforts, provision of technical assistance will be as important as the financing itself. I would like to conclude by thanking my colleagues at NDB and my fellow panelists for making this timely workshop so meaningful. My special thanks go to the Ministry of Finance in Beijing for helping us conceptualize this workshop and giving the highest level leadership to it. Before I conclude, let me also refer to the important points mentioned by the Honorable Vice Minister of China, Excellency Wang Gongwei, in his intervention. Need for a deeper and closer engagement with him and his team at the MOF is a clear takeaway for me. We will continue to bank on the support and guidance of our members in scaling up infra and sustainable finance. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear VP Liu, for your very valuable points on how NDB would unlock diversified financial resources, in particular from the private sectors, and also by way of local financing and other innovative ways of mobilizing more resources. Thank you for that. My next speaker is the head of one of the biggest national development institutions, Mr. Montezano, President of the Brazilian Development Bank. Let's welcome him to virtually deliver his intervention.
Hello. Firstly, I would like to send my regards and my special thanks to my colleague, Mr. Trujillo, for the invitation to be here at this panel speaking about infrastructure for sustainable development. Naturally, this topic is at the heart at BNDES. The bank has been supporting Brazilian infrastructure for 17 years. Based on that history, we have quite a good knowledge of our region, our opportunities, and our challenges. And I would like to share with you, with our colleagues from NDB, our experience and some tips about how should we be driving emerging market infrastructure. Naturally, when you debate about financing, banks, and infrastructure, the first topic that comes to the table is money, liquidity, or cheap money, competitive cost. And of course, money, liquidity, interest rates, those are crucial factors when we're debating and planning infrastructure. However, I think we should concentrate more our times, our minds, and our debates on the things, on the steps that come before the money, before the financing. From our lessons in Brazil, we learned that, firstly, we need to have a program. We need to have a country or regional agenda where we can plan the sectors. For example, where we can plan water sanitation, where we can plan power generation, where we can plan urban mobility, for example. So having a long-standing and long-cycle plan is crucial for establishing a good partnership on financing. The second thing we need to focus is project preparation. It's technical assistance. And we have been implementing a big effort into BNDES as a technical assistant agent for subnationals and for the federal government in Brazil for the last 3 years. And the good news is, only 3 years after we launched that initiative, BNDES is today, according to Dialogic, the largest project preparator globally. The last 3 years, we've mobilized $50 billion into investments and goodwill for infrastructure projects. And we have a pipeline of more $50 billion to be deployed. This was a big bottleneck for Brazilian infrastructures. So, first thing, having a plan, having a program. Second, technical assistance in project preparation. And speaking with our colleagues from other emerging market economies, project preparation, it is a bottleneck for emerging countries such as Brazil. Thirdly, I'd like to speak a little bit about risk sharing or risk assumption or syndication. Of course, funding sovereign banks such as BNDES or funding domestic banks into Brazil is a relevant thing. But we think that NDB and international banks could have a very relevant presence in Brazil by taking project risks. And when I mean assuming or taking or sharing project risks, I mean much more than the capital that NDB or other players will bring to Brazil. When you take a risk into a project, you support on the governance of the project. You support on technical decisions. You support us on connecting Brazilian standards to global or other emerging economy standards. So you integrate more Brazil to other economies. One of our big agendas in BNDES is to support international, multilateral and development banks to take risks and to syndicate projects in Brazil. Again, we need capital, yes, but we also need brains, we also need knowledge, we also need standards to be shared, and that will make our infrastructure more productive and more efficient. The fourth thing I'd like to mention is about currency. When we mention infrastructure, the vast majority of projects, they are connected to local currency, domestic currency. And of course, we may have some hedge options into dollar, into RMB, to local currency. Of course we can have, but that is expensive. So having an EDB and other international banks supporting Brazil or other emerging economies with local currency is crucial, is critical. The fifth thing, and the last one, I think we should discuss before speaking about cost-effective rates, is about focus. It's about thinking or deciding together with NDB or an international player, which focus are you having, for example, in Brazil. The amount of opportunities we have into emerging economies for infrastructure is huge. It's enormous. You can invest in roads, in ports, airports, water, power generations, rail, whatever. It's endless. That's why we do think that international players, when they are supporting a specific country, if they choose 1, 2, or 3 focus, they could make the difference on that sector. Having a bank such as NDB studying, debating, and supporting the development of 1, 2, or 3 sectors in Brazil will make NDB the edge, the one that will make the difference on that sector. If you have, for example, NDB or international banks spread out across different sectors, it's a kind of, we have your presence, but we miss your attention. So we do want international banks to choose 1 or 2 or 3 specific sectors in Brazil, and alongside with us of BNDES and Brazilian government, support the development and the creation and the building of this specific sector. For example, it's clear that in Brazil, we do need to improve our financial tools, our financial mechanics for supporting rails. We don't have so much short-term rails that we're financing in Brazil. So we need to develop our financial mechanisms, our collateral, the way of structuring the transactions. We do need this help. So rail could be a very, I would say, supportive sector for international knowledge to come from Brazil. A second sector that I could give you as an example is urban mobility. Brazil has made a huge advance in water and sanitation. Brazil has a long-standing knowledge on power generation, but urban mobility is something that we need to develop. Develop the knowledge, develop the standards, develop the companies. So having our international players alongside with us on this agenda will be very, very helpful. And to finish my comment, something that we cannot not mention when we speak about sustainable development and emerging infrastructure is about carbon credit. We do need to speed up the development, the trading, and the creation of carbon credits into emerging economy. We cannot wait at all for the standards, for the roles, for the metrics to come from the developed economies to emerging economies. Of course, there will be a biased trend on how this market will be evolving. And we, emerging economies, we are the big sellers and could be the big hub for markets when you speak about standard on carbon credits, liquidity, certification methods. And we, the development banks and multilaterals, we have a critical role to be played there. That's why BNDES is leading up, alongside with our environmental minister, all the carbon credits agenda in Brazil, and we do think that NDB has an international and good standing presence to lead that connection across emerging economies. Mr. Trujillo, thank you very much for the invitation. I wish that these tips were helpful and heard to hear all your colleagues' feedback and some recommendations for BNDES, and very happy to keep you working and strengthen the relation between NDB and BNDES. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you very much, President. Thank you for joining us at this very late hour in Brazil. And once again, thank you for sharing with us the experiences and even lessons learned with regard to development financing. We, NDB, would like to further strengthen the cooperation and the partnership with you and your bank in the mutual interest. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Jonathan Wurzel. I'm not sure whether the name is correct, is pronounced correctly or not. Director of McKinsey Global Institute. And this gentleman is very important to us because he played a very important role in helping us formulate this new strategy. Let's welcome Mr. Wurzel.
Thank you so much, Vice President Zhou and distinguished guests. It's a real honor, and I truly mean this, to be in this room today. And I appreciate the opportunity to share as well a few remarks. So I'm speaking in my capacity as one of the directors of the McKinsey Global Institute, which is our research organization. But I also had the honor to participate in the support the development of the second general strategy. So I perhaps may draw on that experience a bit as well. I I believe we live in a very momentous time, that this is this year, the next couple of years will reveal to us all a very stochastic change in our expectations about the global context. As we emerge into this multipolar, carbon-constrained, augmented, aging world of ourselves, it will have implications for our global financial system and the recapitalization thereof. In that context, I think organizations such as NDB play a critical role in defining the voice of the stakeholders. The voice of the stakeholder, for me, was a seminal concept that came out of the second general strategy. Of course, it was integral to the foundation of NDB, but I think now more than ever, the voice of the stakeholder is a necessary, critical, foundational element to finding a path through to the new set of certainties or givens that will govern our future financial and indeed global economic system. I believe that NDB can and should be that voice, and that through coordination, collaboration, and cooperation, they can achieve that mission. I'd like to share a few thoughts on how to get there. As VP Anil and others have stated, that the requirements for infrastructure will continue to grow. From the EMDC perspective, the forecast is to rise from the low 20s over the last decade to the high 30s over the next decade, reflecting the increasing capital required for sustainability as well as the growth requirements simply to support economic development and to close the empowerment gap in many of the member countries. So with that, the reality, of course, is that the role of multilateral development institutions, as was said, has been relatively static, and the requirements are coming on to mobilize private capital more and more. In that sense, the context is changing on us, the mission is changing on us, but the importance is growing. And to get there, again, we come back to how to work together collaboratively with our broader ecosystem to be that voice of the stakeholder. In the case of our governments in the region, the idea that we are playing not only a role to deliver projects but to support the financial systems is, of course, critical. We've seen great steps to engage investors locally, be they central banks, ministers of finance. I think that the words of the Minister of Finance were very much heard, that further engagement of investors locally to support local currency initiatives is critical, and that there are tangible steps to be taken there to make it simply more attractive for those local investors to support support local currency offerings. Similarly, lending locally, building local operations teams, building a pipeline of local currency quality projects, of course, critical here. Sustainability, a second community of interest. We would note that there is, of course, this is part of the founding mission, building that pipeline of projects, importantly creating the impact framework for the organization around what we mean by sustainability to translate the overall target into more specific actionable steps, and finally being an innovation pioneer will all go a long way to making a reality around our green pipeline. And thirdly, private capital mobilization, as was said. I think that there has been great progress made, and we look at the reports for MDB mobilization of private capital, we see that there is, and the target, I should note then from the NDB side, is very aggressive in this regard, which is great. Is that this will be a critical opportunity through risk mitigation, which is something, again, only the stakeholders can provide in most cases, through greater syndication, through the use of insurance products, and even at some point through equity, all of which can lead to a much greater level of engagement by the private sector, which we should view very much as part of our stakeholder collaboration. So with that, how to engage going forward, we'd hope that these 3 C's, coalitions, collaborations, and coordination, a coalition of MDBs around project co-financing, trust funds, exchange of exposures, all ideas to be explored. As the African saying goes, when you want to go fast, you can go alone. When you want to go far, you have to go together. So going together with your MDB colleagues is more likely to become a sustainable path towards engaging on this new journey to expand the role and change the context. Obviously, collaboration with local ecosystem partners, such as the very impressive efforts that Vindes has been making, as well as the government stakeholders, will be critical. And with that, the capacity to coordinate locally, to establish teams on the ground in the countries of origin, will, I think, at some time become a requirement for the institution. But overall, the stage is set for some very significant global changes in context. As I said, we are moving into a great new adventure as far as the global system goes. I'll close with Ayrton Senna, as a race car driver, who said something to the effect that in a sunny day, when you cannot pass 15 cars on the racetrack, but when it rains, you can. There's quite a bit of rain coming. If we are capable of seeing our way through this, through being the collaborator that we can to mobilize the voice of stakeholders, we will have a role to play to shape the futures of all of our peoples. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Verso, for your sharing with us the insights about how we could do better in the development financing, and also how to make NDB a better place. Thank you. Well, last but not least, let's warmly welcome Professor Zhang, Mr. Zhang Jun, Dean of School of Economics of Fudan University, and he is also Director of the China Center for Economic Studies. The floor is yours, Professor.
Vice President Zhou, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Pretty honored to be in this pretty new building. I've never been here before. But my relation with the New Development Bank, go back to initial year when the bank was, established in Shanghai. And I got the chance to meet the first president of the bank, and I welcomed him to my office. So since then, we decided to work together, and with my team supporting behind me, and I joined the first flagship project on the financing for the infrastructure. Which is very good report. I always encourage my students to learn from this project, because this is a very comprehensive narrative on the infrastructure financing in China, in other developing economies. So I think that the NDB focuses very clearly on the scope of the business by, for instance, define the sustainability, as the core spirit of the operations in developing and emerging market economies. In terms of the financing for sustainable development projects, especially for the infrastructure, which has been very much lagging behind in most of the developing and emerging market economies. And I think it's very important to have the capacity mobilizing resources, in not only by enlarging the balance sheet, and I think that the bank also hopes to do a lot more operations beyond the balance sheet so that they could work with the private sector, not only in China, but other developing emerging market economies. So once you could move beyond the balance sheet, then you actually got the capacity to build, in raising the resources, through the collaboration with the private sector. So I agree that the NDB is considering the vehicles that it probably can utilize to mobilize more resources. The first one is that they want to work with the financial institution, for instance, to use the more diversified and sophisticated financial instrument. And secondly, I think that they probably want to do, a little further, for instance, by having SPVs, special purpose vehicles, targeting on some of the infrastructure projects. But also, large number of the private companies probably have the ability to work with NDB in some of the sustainable way. So I think as a development bank, NDB can take advantage, of being the multilateral and the some of the broader vision for green finance and development projects to support the financing for these operations in developing economies. So you can definitely work with the local development bank, for instance, of each member country, to issue the bond, to get the money to support the local construction of infrastructure. So I think for NDB, who is a latecomer, I think the great advantage, he faces is actually to try to avoid the problem facing, by existing other development banks in other countries, especially the countries with the, too many constraints imposed, on the recipient of the loan. Once they want to get loan, they have to satisfy the standard and the minimum requirement, from the lender to carry on some of the institutional reform. But it doesn't happen here, for NDB, because when you decide to finance the projects, it is not something that the NDB will impose on you some of the institution so that you can, you can now do anything that you wanted, So that's the point. So I think that created some of the advantages that NDB enjoys when they decided to financing, the project, right? And you can easily work with the local counterpart, for instance, to joining, issue the bond or get financing from the local capital market. So that could lower the average, financing costs for even the same amount of the loan, which is available from from NDB. So finally, I want to say, well, as a latecomer, NDB definitely need to ramp up its capacity, capacity of mobilization, and a capacity to, for instance, to support human resources development, for the recipient country. It's not something that you can easily, take the, infrastructure as a work from the, human resources, because we have to make sure, all the infrastructure being utilized locally with the people who are qualified. So I think to support the human resources development probably is a, I would say been part of the operations carried on by the NBD, by the New Development Bank, when they do, financing the infrastructure. So I also been happy to see that NDB define itself as a catalyst, for financing the project, because NDB is relatively small, right? And it has a very different governance structure inside, and it has different, regulations and institutions. So NDB can, I think can be something like serving as the catalyst, to help the developing and the emerging market economies to improve their, spending on the infrastructure by joining, as a development bank loan, joining with local counterpart and being accessible to local financial resources. So that would be something I learned from the experience of the NDB, and I hope the NDB gonna, scale up these, member countries in gradually approach, so that they could enlarge the, financial foundation for the future role to play as a catalyst of the financial solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Zhang. Thank you for your knowledgeable and insightful views about development financing, in particular in this trying time under the global context. And you are a very good friend of our institution, and we very much look forward to the more interaction with not only you, but also Fudan University. Thank you for your valuable points. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the very last 1 hour with us for this very inspiring and constructive and fruitful panel. So once again, I would thank all the speakers for your excellent presentations. All of your points are very well taken. And I think we have the full confidence that NDB will smoothly implement this second general strategy and further enhance the bank's international influence, as well as the representation and the voice of emerging markets and developing countries as a whole in this global governance structure.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and also good evening, online guests. First, let me thank you for the co-organizers, the NDB and the Chinese Ministry of Finance, invite me to moderate this very high-level panel. As a local think tank person, I have had the chance of observing the NDB actually from its birth and then growing up. So really congratulate for the NDB now moving into this very modern building. NDB's mandate is to mobilize resources for the infrastructure and sustainable development for BRICS countries and other emerging and developing economies. I think this mandate is couldn't be more relevant considering the current challenges facing the world economy, the high inflation, and also the energy crisis. And also short-term and both short-term and long-term challenges, which has great negative spillover effects on the emerging and developing economies. So our first panel has had a very comprehensive presentations, speeches on how the NDB's second 5 years general strategy was drafted. And I've personally benefited a lot. Now our panel 2 will further elaborate on how the NDB can deliver the development impact. As Lucia has introduced, actually we are today having a hybrid panel. Hybrid panel of both on-site and also online, and also hybrid of both founding members, representatives, as well as our new, and actually Egypt is a prospective new member of the NDB. I hope Egypt will finish your domestic approval process soon, becoming a formal NDB member. And I also learned that NDB is going to probably welcome another other new members. So really good news. So NDB is becoming a global MDB, actually with global impact. By saying that, let's move to the, we have only 40 minutes in total, so it's not too long. Let me be brief. I will first invite our speakers to give their opening remarks for 5 minutes each, and then we have a round of some kind of questions and discussions. Now let me invite our first speaker, His Excellency Dr. Ali Al-Dahari, who is the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to China. Ambassador Ali, His Excellency Dr. Ali Al-Dahari has worked in Beijing since October 2017. Before that, he held a wide range of senior positions in the ADNOC group of companies and also represented the UAE in participating in OPEC affairs. His Excellency Dr. Ali Dahara, we know your country is one of the major shareholders already of some Southern-led MDBs, such as the AAA-rated Islamic Development Bank, as well as the owner of a large sovereign wealth fund. And also, UAE is now transforming from a traditional oil exporter to a global leader in new energy. So I'm sure that you will bring both new resources, as well as new experiences to NDB. We welcome your comments. So His Excellency Dr. Al-Dahari, please, the floor is yours.
Dr. Yu Ye, thank you so much for your kind and thoughtful introduction. And also, let me add my voice of thanks and appreciations to the organizers of this timely workshop, indeed. To answer your question, Dr. Yo Ye, since the UE joined the BRICS, a new development bank, our membership has allowed us to expand our partnership with the influential economies like China, which is conceived to achieving further equitable global economic governance. The UE is committed to fostering cooperation with all member countries and has been fostering such partnerships, particularly in the areas of infrastructure, sustainability, and beyond. Meanwhile, the UE also seeks to further engage developing markets and multilateral institutions for further collaboration in tackling global issues, promoting shared development and strengthening international solidarity and amity. As a beneficiary and advocate for multilateralism, the UE upholds the principles of the UN Charter and aims to increase the representation of developing markets in global governance. We are currently facing wide-ranging global challenges such as climate change, the stabilization, and unilateralism, and geopolitics, of course. The UE, together with other members of the NDB, will take on increasingly vital roles in leading multilateral efforts in response. It is also essential to develop a comprehensive strategy for setting out and promoting high standards in sustainable financing. In that regard, both the NDB's general strategy and its environment and social framework establish a very thorough and well thought out architecture for achieving the bank's goals in line with the international best practices and standards. The framework really goes out of its way to emphasize a precautionary approach in allocating funding and considering the potential environmental implications of proposed development projects. As for NDB's position on coal-fired power generation specifically, it is certainly uphold stance and possess something of challenge to established norms. Of course, we must remember that coal is still a fundamental component of industrial activity in the developing world, but it is certainly the right step to take with a view to the long-term fulfillment of green energy goals. After all, a fundamental part of the NDB's mandate is to help its member countries live up their own climate commitments under the Paris Agreement and the United Nations 2030 Agenda, Sustainable Agenda. All NDB member countries have set their own nationally determined contributions for cutting carbon emissions. The UE has devoted particular efforts to building a sustainable future with our national initiative, Net Zero Carbon by 2050. We have launched transformational projects such as the widespread building of solar power plants, the national shift to eco-friendly EV cars, as well as the construction of sustainable low-carbon urban communities. As you know, the UAE will host the COP28 in UAE next year. With this honor, the UAE will continue our work in achieving a sustainable future for vital industries with the UAE and across the world. The UAE will apply its experience as a trusted global convener to ensure COP28. UE reflects the voice of all relevant stakeholders to achieve a global consensus for practical climate progress. We will also leverage our country's track record as a clean tech innovator to deliver solutions for truly sustainable development that maximize social and economic benefits for all. Ultimately, I would say that the standards that NDB has set for itself and its members are necessary if we are achieving what is needed. In our ongoing efforts to transition towards sustainable or sustainability and green energy. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency Dr. Ali Adhari, for your very encouraging message. Now let's move to our second panelist from the online, from Beijing, actually, Mr. Zhang Bo. Mr. Zhang is alternate director of NDB for China, as well as Deputy Director General of the Center for Evaluation of the World Bank Loan Projects of Chinese Ministry of Finance. He also holds other senior positions in Chinese Ministry of Finance, such as Director in the General Office and the Budget Department of the Chinese Ministry of Finance before he took this current position. So now let's welcome Mr. Zhang. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ye. Good morning, colleagues. It's my great pleasure to join this session's discussion, focusing on expanding the development impact. As we know, development is the eternal theme of human community. The new development bank is a concrete achievement of solidarity and cooperation among BRICS countries in pursuit of common development. Since its inception, the bank has set its goal to promote the development of member countries. During the second new general strategy cycle, NDB should adhere its original aspiration of development and cooperation, learn from good experience of peer MDBs, accelerate unleashing its potential, expand its development effectiveness, and further strengthen solidarity and cooperation among emerging markets and developing countries. Here, I'd like to share 3 points. First, NDB should admit new members steadily and expand its development impact. The steady membership expansion is instrumental for the bank, not only to further consolidate its role as a funding source for international development, a knowledge base, and a platform for cooperation, but also to pool development experience and financial resources, expand the scale of development impacts, and support greater development of the bank. The importance of membership expansion should be fully recognized. It will help the bank address short-term challenges and promote long-term development. The bank should stick to its strategic positioning as an MDB that serves EMDCs, positively respond to potential new members' willingness to join the bank, maintain positive momentum of membership expansion. It is also important to promote the synergy between the membership expansion of the bank and that of the BRICS countries, so as to continuously expand and deepen cooperation among EMDCs. Second, NDB should uphold member-led principle and strengthen development synergy. In the course of new general strategy implementation, NDB should respect member countries' ownership, improve country systems, and promote a linkage between new general strategy and the domestic development agenda of member countries. The bank should also distill useful experiences from member countries' development practices to continuously improve existing international standards. I would like to share a good example. Earlier this year, NDB has approved two Chinese projects, Shanxi Xi'an Xianyang International Airport expansion and Lanzhou International Airport expansion. Both projects not only boost local socio-economic development and promote cross-border connectivity, but also help the bank improve institutional capacity, which is a typical triple win solution and practice. Third, NDB should strengthen internal governance and enhance development effectiveness to meet the requirement of the bank during its business expansion. Internal organizational structure and supervision model should be adjusted from time to time for the optimal cost effectiveness, considering common practice of major MDBs. The bank should optimize its internal process, strengthen operational capabilities by using digital and intelligent means, and improve the efficiency of project preparation, approval, and implementation to better match member countries' financing needs and the investment pace. The bank should further improve self-evaluation and the independent evaluation system and form a sound mechanism of self-improvement and self-development based on lessons learned from its experience. Meanwhile, the bank should support member countries in capacity building and make joint efforts with member countries in promoting its development effectiveness. Dear colleagues, as the BRICS chair of 2022, we would like to extend our great appreciation to President Marcos Choi and the bank for the strong support extended to China, including organizing this excellent workshop. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to the bank team now in this meeting for your best efforts and elaborate preparation and organization. Just as what has been pointed out by our Minister Liu and the Vice Minister Wang, China will give our consistent and resolute support to NDB for its greater development. And in this process, we are ready to work with relevant all stakeholders, and we are convinced that the NDB will usher in a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Zhang, for your very clear and relevant 3 points. Our third speaker will be His Excellency Mr. SM Mohammed Hanafi from on-site. So, who is the ambassador of the Embassy of the Arab Republic of Egypt in Beijing. His Excellency Ambassador SM Hanafi is a very seasoned diplomat, and he served in embassies in Nigeria, Italy, Tunisia, and Spain, and was also a former permanent representative of Egypt to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. His Excellency Ambassador Hanafi, we know that Egypt will be a new formal member of the NDB. So, compared with UAE as a non-borrower country, Egypt and Bangladesh as well will be joined in the NDB as a borrower member. So, Could you share with us from your perspective on how do you expect from the NDB's development impact for your country? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yu Yi, for your introduction. And I will start by saying that I'm quite privileged to be here today, and as my first official function as ambassador of Egypt to China. I arrived only in Beijing 2 weeks ago. So thank you. I'd like to extend my thanks to the Ministry of Finance of China and the New Development Bank for this opportunity and providing me with the occasion to engage in discussions on one of the most urgent and crucial topics of our countries, as well as giving me the opportunity to see the city of Shanghai and visit the headquarters of the bank. Of course, when I arrived to Beijing, I was the first reflection that came to my mind as I was gazing from the vehicle is how China has transformed through the past years to be one of the most developing countries, so to speak. And of course, it's a successful experience that any ambassador would like to learn from and to see ways that his respective country can benefit from, especially as a fellow developing country. My presence here also acts as a way to enable our country, Egypt, as a prospective member of the NDB, to share with all members the experiences and best practices concerning development and achieving sustainable goals, sustainable development goals. Our countries, as has been mentioned today in the morning session, represent the majority of population, global population, almost 20% of the global GDP, an impressive platform for investment opportunities, and it's high time that we have a deserved representation in the financial and economic architecture of the world. Egypt has been interested in engaging with NDP and BRICS institutions. The Egyptian president was, His Excellency Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, was keen on attending the 9th Summit of BRICS in China, 2017, and also virtually participated in the BRICS Plus high-level dialogue on global development in June 2022, where he expressed our satisfaction to have joined the process of membership of the new development bank in December 2021. Coming to your question, Dr. Yu Li, we feel that Egypt has an added value to profit from NDP or other MDBs for that matter, because we are embarking upon a massive transformative infrastructure transformation in Egypt. As many of you who probably have seen our countries recently and compared it to a generation ago, smart cities are sprawling everywhere, massive infrastructure projects, renewable energy, solar energy and wind power are spreading. So within, of course, the framework of Egypt 2030 development agenda. So we look forward through our membership of the bank to benefit from the enabling more access to finance, access to expertise, mobilization of resources, and also to act as a being at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, proximity to Southern Europe. We feel that we have a privileged strategic location. Of course, Suez Canal being a major artery of world commerce. So we feel that we can provide quite an opportunity, a very good opportunity for fellow members, and of course investment opportunities and industrial, of course, the industrial zone in Suez Canal, where many partners, including China, are taking part in the projects there. All these, of course, acts as a win-win for both NDP and Egypt. But of course, having come to my previous posting in Africa as ambassador of Egypt to Nigeria, I can feel comfortable in stating that Egypt, of course, has a very, very successful experience in cooperating with Africa. In recent times, of course, we're not a rich nation, but we have offered quite a remarkable number of training programs for fellow African experts in agriculture, in various irrigation, in education. So Egypt, of course, by capitalizing on its membership in NDP and also its strategic location as part of the corridors of the Belt and Road Initiative and other, of course, global initiatives, we feel quite privileged in being there and being present there and being, of course, a contributor to this very, very prosperous ventures. Of course, in a few weeks, Egypt will host the COP27 conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. This will provide a platform for the countries and institutions, including the NDB, to discuss innovative solutions for the issue of climate change. Now, our focus will be to go beyond the pledging process, which has been, of course, important, to implementation of viable strategies to combat climate change and make the world a greener and more sustainable for all the humanity to live in. It's noteworthy that Egypt will launch, with the help, of course, and partnership of other like-minded countries, of course, developing countries being at the foremost of this effort. Initiatives in food security. We have a round table on food security, a round table on climate finance. We have many important initiatives. Of course, one of the target will be to see ways we can achieve the benchmark or the target for access to finance that has been pledged before for developing countries and has not, unfortunately, been met yet. But we understand the global scene now. Of course, we have to maximize what we can get, and the global scene is not, unfortunately, at its best, owing to we're still reeling from the COVID pandemic, and of course, with various conflicts taking place. Of course, it's not the best scene politically or economically, or the disruption in supply chains. But we cannot have the luxury to make the climate action a hostage of all these events. Of course, our presidency of the COP27 we will depend and partner with all like-minded developing countries and development partners to see ways we can pursue a robust climate action for the sake of our generation and generations to come. I would like to seize the opportunity to extend my appreciation again to the NDB. And of course, I congratulate friendly people of China on the successful outcome of the 20th Congress of the CCP. I wish the host country all the prosperity and progress. Thank you again.
Thank you, His Excellency Ambassador Hanafi, for your quite comprehensive comments, and I hope you enjoy your new life here in China. Next, let's welcome our speaker from NDB, from our host organization, Mr. Leslie Mestop. Mr. Mestop is Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of NDB, as many of you actually already know. He is responsible for the treasury, portfolio management, finance, and accounting functions of the bank, which is a very key position for the bank, of course. Mr. Mestop holds senior leadership roles in both private and public sectors in the past, such as Managing Director and President of the Bank of America, Merrill Lynch for Southern Africa, and the government of South Africa. He's also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. So, Mr. Vice President, I think you have the most to talk about our topics today, about the NDB's development impact. The floor is yours, please. Welcome you from the United States.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yu. It's great to see you again, and also good morning and to all of our fellow panelists. I'll be very brief. I'd like to start out by saying that the development finance system as a whole is undergoing very important structural changes at present. And the first point I'd like to draw attention to is the fact that the expectations for delivery of MDBs have increased quite significantly. As you know, some reference was made earlier on to the recent report done by the G20 Capital Adequacy Review report, which essentially is looking at how can the multilateral development banks in general increase development impact without a fresh injection of capital. In other words, how can we do more within the existing capital ratios of the bank? So we are very supportive of these recommendations that have been put forward, and we look forward to the implementation in the next phase of the G20 of these ideas, which are really focused on enhancing the lending capacity and the impact of development banks in general. Second point I'd like to make is that it is very critical for us as an institution as we graduate to the next level. We've come through a phase, a startup phase, a rapid growth phase, and now reached, if you like, some kind of equilibrium or steady state. It is very important for us, in order to enhance development impact, that we work much more closely and look at the synergies and complementarities between ourselves and the other multilateral banks like AIIB, like Asia Development Bank, IFC, EBRD, and so on. And as part of the strategy for the next 5 years, that will also be one of the key focus areas for the bank. The next theme that I think that has already been touched on, there is a very exciting theme for development finance today, is the much higher focus on ESG and sustainability. The ambassador just made reference to the fact that in a few weeks' time, the world will gather again for the climate conference in Egypt, where the focus will very much be on implementation. Because last year, as you know, at COP26, there was a sharp spotlight, a bright spotlight was shone on the role of the financial sector in enabling the transition to net zero, and the particular role that multilateral banks have to play. And a specific emphasis was placed on the changing role from lending and balance sheet growth towards playing a more catalytic role, meaning using our balance sheet in much more imaginative ways to improve the risk return profile of projects so that we can crowd in more private sector finance. As you know, multilateral banks constitute only one small portion of the overall financial system. There are large pools of private capital in the institutional investor community that we want to crowd into development finance. And one of the ways that we will do that is to improve the toolkit, is to make more use of instruments like guarantees that can bring in fresh capital. The final two themes that I'd like to touch on, which is specifically relevant for emerging markets, is the just transition. As you know, this is not a smooth process where all countries will benefit in equal fashion. There will be winners and losers from this transition to a green economy. As you know, many of our countries have energy deficits, for example, and are endowed with large reserves, for example, of coal. It is very difficult today, as you know, to do new coal-fired power in many emerging markets because the financing is simply not available. However, when the developed countries industrialized 100, 150, and 200 years ago, the price of coal was not a key consideration. And therefore, the historical starting points of emerging markets and the developed world has to be recognized as we undergo this transition towards net zero. I think that at COP27, there is going to be a significant focus on this theme of the just transition. And this is a theme that we hope to build on in the work of New Development Bank going forward. The final point I'd like to make is to draw attention to the fact that we have now put a target of 40% for climate finance, but the bigger focus will be on climate adaptation. And just to highlight again, when it comes to climate adaptation, one of the great challenges is that these are not necessarily projects that generate revenue, which is why climate adaptation will probably be, again, one of the bigger themes coming out of COP27. In order to enhance our development impact as a new development bank going forward, we need to pay greater attention to the strategies and of how we're going to ensure or assist our countries in their green transition by specifically strengthening the resilience of our infrastructure through this focus on adaptation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Mr. Mastop, for bringing us the very current and fresh discussions from Washington, D.C. We hope to see that NDB actually is quite involved in the most current discussions on the G20's topic. Next, let's invite our another on-site speaker, our distinguished guest from Bangladesh, Dr. Mohammed Nasrul Islam. He is now Chargé d'Affaires of the Embassy of People's Republic of Bangladesh in Beijing. Dr. Islam is a career diplomat of Bangladesh. He joined the Bangladesh Foreign Service in the year 2003, and since then have been serving in the headquarters and also Bangladesh missions abroad, such as in Berlin and Amman. Dr. Islam joined the Bangladesh Embassy in Beijing in last year. Specifically, I noted that you graduated from Fudan University. You got your PhD there. So now, as I mentioned before, that Bangladesh also joins NDB as a new borrower. And so what is your expectation and comments on the NDB's development impact? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Am I audible? Yeah, thank you. So, Excellency Ambassadors, distinguished guests, scholars, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and delighted to be in this beautiful city again, which is very close to my heart, my most beloved city, and to share my thoughts on how to expand the development impact of NDB. NDB, a bank which was established in 2015, and as the president of NDB today morning said, with a passion to foster development in the developing countries with nuanced endeavors for their development. And Bangladesh became a member of first member of the NDB's expansion on 16th of September 2021. And I would say that it was probably one of the best selection of NDB to make Bangladesh a member. And my speech today will elaborate why I think it is so. Bangladesh has been projected as a development miracle in the recent years. It is one of the fastest growing economy in the Asia Pacific. In 2019, Asian Development Bank identified Bangladesh as the fastest growing economy in the Asia Pacific. And despite the pandemic, our economy was one of the fastest growing in the whole world. Our government has designed Vision 2041, like the Chinese government CPC, and we have attained the first goal of becoming a middle income country by 2021. And we are poised to be a prosperous country, high income country by the year 2041. And we have designed our projects in that way. A few months back, I was meeting some high officials in the Chinese Foreign Ministry, and he was saying that he is too much eager to visit Bangladesh to see the development of the country, because the development mega projects which we have undertaken have been integrated in a way it is hardly seen in a developing country. And that has made Bangladesh a development miracle and poised an industrialization hub in the Asia Pacific now. So in line with the topic of today, how to expand the development impact of NDB, I would first identify two aspects that we need to keep in mind. The development deficit since the establishment of the Bretton Woods Institute, like World Bank, IMF, the developing countries hardly could develop. I cannot actually, it's still difficult for me to find a developing country to develop with this recipe. So there is a real development deficit. And the second aspect is that because of the peril of the climate change and environmental degradation, we have to take up a new strategy for development in line with the Sustainable Development Goal and 2030 Agenda for Development. We need to grow with low carbon industrialization. And I am very impressed to see the 2022-2026 agenda of NDB, that these things have been kept in mind, and I am really impressed with this report. So with this aspect, I would propose two prospects through which actually NDB can enhance the development impact. First is a resilient and productive investment in infrastructure. Like, let us take the example of Bangladesh. Bangladesh has just a few months back inaugurated the operation of one of the largest and most technologically difficult bridge, Padma Bridge, a bridge which is constructed in the mighty Padma River and an architectural magnet, and with the help of the Chinese engineering. And this bridge, it is predicted that it will enhance the GDP of our country by 0.84% per year. And this bridge actually will instigate the development of other infrastructure and other activities in the country. We are going to inaugurate the Kornofuli Tunnel within 2-3 months, also with the finance of the Chinese government assistance. And that is designed in a way like in the city of Shanghai, the Pudong area has developed. The other side of the river is not developed. And it is predicted that once we inaugurate this tunnel, it will trigger the development like the city of Shanghai has boomed up. We have taken also initiative to build up ports, Mangla Port, and also Bangabandhu Shilpanagar, and which is said by the scholars that this will make Bangladesh a manufacturing hub for the Asia Pacific region. So this kind of productive infrastructure, NDB may think, which will multiply the development impact in the other sectors and instigate the work in other of the people, and also trigger the other kind of activities for the generation of. Also, we need to keep in mind that like the Padma Bridge, just after inauguration, the return is very high. We can pay the loan we have taken, and Bangladesh has never faltered in payment, a very good record. So Bangladesh can be an example how to take a resilient and productive infrastructural projects. And second, not only the infrastructural project, but we also need to think how to improve the livelihood. It's not that we just want to visualize the development, but we also need to improve the livelihood of our people. NDB has designated 40% of fund will go for climate resilient program like mitigation and adaptation. In that sector, I would say that few sectors, also Bangladesh and other countries, we can think of like the electronic vehicle. If you go to Bangladesh, like all other developing countries in the beginning, the air quality is very low. People's lives are in danger because of the air quality. So if we can transport the electronic vehicle, then it will save our lives as well as contribute to the climate mitigation. NDB has also taken the water project. Water is a very vital element for the people. So Bangladesh is a land of rivers. So we need to save the rivers and dredging the rivers, the lives of the rivers. Rivers are like Muchin. Like in China, you say that mother river, Huanghu Muchin. So rivers are like our mother. So we need to save the rivers, and also the drinking water, waste management. In Bangladesh, a few months back, we have started the waste to energy product. So these are not that much return will come, but it will contribute to the NDB's objective of 40% funding in climate mitigation adaptation programs. So these things we can keep in mind. And finally, I would emphasize on expand the global outreach of NDB to expand the membership and also the capacity building of the member countries so that they can identify the projects which are beneficial for them and which have more development impact. So these are all my deliberation. And finally, before I end, I would like to emphasize one thing, because I have come to NDB before once before also. So NDB has a system of studying the local context, not like the other multilateral banks. Like you give a recipe which will be uniformly applied in all the countries. NDB is a better, smarter, and agile policy of studying the local context, and that contextualizing with that local context in the general policy of NDB. I think this is most important, more study, more research to identify the projects, both for development, also for the livelihood improvement. So and finally, before ending, I hope that the stability will return in our world, and our developing world will embark on the development path again in full swing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Islam, for your great comments on the value added of the NDB for your country. And the last but not the least, let's invite, we know that Mr. Zhang Wencai, who is the Vice President of the Chinese Export-Import Bank. He is not available to attend online, but he actually prepares his remarks very well. So we will see a recorded message from him. But I still will give you the brief introduction of Dr. Zhang. Dr. Zhang Wencai is now currently a vice president of the Chinese Export and Export Bank. Before that, he was vice president at the Agricultural Development Bank of China for about 3 years. Before that, he also held senior leadership positions in Chinese Ministry of Finance as well, including director for China at the NDB and AIIB. He was also vice president of ADB. So who would help us play the recorded message, recorded video from Mr. Zhang, please?
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It gives me a great pleasure to join you today at this workshop. I'm very happy to meet many old friends. Since its establishment 7 years ago, NDB, as a multilateral development institution established by emerging markets and developing countries, has achieved remarkable results. I'm fully confident that NDB will embrace a bright future. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to share my views on how NDB can better play its role as a multilateral development institution and further expand its influence. First, expanding membership steadily. I noticed that NDB's membership has expanded from the 5 BRICS countries at its inception to 9 countries. Bangladesh, Egypt, UAE, and Uruguay have newly joined the NDB family, all of whom are developing countries with good regional representation and influence. For multilateral institutions, expanding membership is an important way to enhance their international influence. Therefore, I suggest that NDB could keep expanding membership and its coverage of developing countries in a gradual and balanced manner, based on its own positioning as well as development strategy and priorities. Second, promoting technology and knowledge transfer. NDB has played an important role in mobilizing funds for infrastructure construction and sustainable development in member countries. In addition to that, I hope that in the future, NDB could also provide more technical assistance, knowledge and experience sharing, and promote technology transfer to help member countries enhance capacity building. Third, improving the quality and effectiveness of the project. I hope that NDB could not only do more projects, but also pay more attention to the quality and the effectiveness of the project. In other words, NDB should strengthen monitoring over the whole project cycle, from planning and design, construction to operation and maintenance, to ensure that the project can be implemented with high quality and generate benefits as expected, and that the project can run for a sustainable end in the long term. This will not only help keep the institution's own assets safe and enhance its reputation, but also bring tangible benefits to countries concerned. Fourth, introducing new products and business models. At present, and for quite a long time in the future, there is a huge gap in international development financing, especially in infrastructure investment. As emerging multilateral institutions, NDB could draw on the experience of those veteran players like the World Bank and other international financial institutions to push forward reform in its business policy, introducing new products and business models, and make more use of local currency financing to help bridge the financing gap of member countries. Meanwhile, NDB could mobilize more social and private capital investment through guarantees, insurance, and reinsurance to realize risk sharing and transfer, and lead the way in international development financing in the 21st century. Fifth, strengthening partnership. No single institution enjoys sufficient resources on its own. Therefore, I suggest NDB to actively deepen bilateral, trilateral, and multilateral cooperation with global and regional MDBs as well as policy-based and commercial financial institutions in relevant countries. By leveraging respective strengths, all parties can forge synergy and deliver mutual benefits. Here's one case in point. In 2021, China Exim Bank and NDB signed a MOU to strengthen ties in specific business, staff exchange, information and knowledge sharing. By joining hands, the two banks have conducted fruitful cooperation in post-pandemic economic recovery and sustainable development on lending facilities. Looking ahead, we could further explore project-based cooperation, both in China and other NEB member countries. 6. Boosting inclusiveness of development. In terms of the project, by financing the project, NDB could promote the economic development, create more jobs, and increase residents' income in project host countries. In particular, the vulnerable groups could also be catered to, with more jobs opportunities provided during project construction and more benefits generated after project completion. In terms of supporting areas for infrastructure investment, NDB should not only support hardware infrastructures, but also soft ones in education and public health. More attention should be paid to support social progress, enhance labor skills while vocational education, and improve general health. In terms of regional development, regional disparity is a common issue for many developing countries. In face of the uneven urban, rural, and regional development, NDB should focus more on underdeveloped areas to ensure coordinated regional and sub-regional development in project host countries. Distinguished guests, at present, the world is in urgent need to resolve global development challenges. Against this background, Chinese President Xi Jinping put forward the Global Development Initiative at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly last year, emphasizing commitment to development as a priority, a people-centered approach, benefits for all, innovation-driven development, harmony between man and nature, and result-oriented actions. China Exim Bank is ready to join hands and deepen cooperation with NDB in implementing the initiative and contributing to more balanced, coordinated, and inclusive global development. In conclusion, I wish today's workshop a full success. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang, for your 6 points, very comprehensive. And I'm impressed that your bank has signed MOU with the NDB, and also, very interestingly, actually has conducted cooperation domestically in China. So we hope that we will see more collaboration between your bank and NDB in other BRICS countries and also our new members. So now we come to the Q&A session. Our distinguished speakers have left a lot of food for thought. And I think we cannot cover all of them, but I think my takeaway these several points. First, for the membership expansion, and secondly, NDB as more as a catalyst for mobilizing more private resources, even though it's difficult to have more capital increase. And thirdly, to support more climate financing and green infrastructure, inclusive development. More co-financing, more collaboration between NDB and other peer institutions, including both multilateral and also local financial institutions. So now let's come to the second stage. I will just have some follow-up questions for our distinguished speakers. First, for His Excellency Dr. Ali Al-Dahari, from the Ambassador of UAE in China. You have talked about your expectation about how UAE can bring to the NDB. And the NDB has just launched its second 5-year general strategy. For the development impact, we know that it's quite a very broad concept. The United Nations 2030 agenda includes 17, so very, very broad goals. So what do you expect? What would you suggest for the NDB? So what should be the major impacts that the NDB should focus on? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yu Ye, for asking me. I think that one of the most important aspects to the NDB and its mission has to do with its focus on social and environmental sustainability. In terms of the 5-year general strategy, the feature that most stood out for me was the bank's commitment to channel 40% of its total financing to projects that deal with the climate change mitigation and energy transition. This perhaps the most profound issue for our time, and it is something that the global community has to address by working together collectively. As a BRICS-led initiative, it is entirely appropriate that NDB should make this the centerpiece for its offers to encourage sustainable development. As you know, when the UAE joined the BRICS New Development Bank last September, it became the first country from the region of Middle East and North Africa to do so. Our membership of the NDB provides a platform to foster cooperation with an important group of major emerging economics. Since becoming the member of the NDB, the UAE has actively worked to integrate the opportunities and responsibilities of this platform into our broader vision of promoting economic development internationally. The world has begun to enter a post-pandemic era, yet new challenges continue to confront the global community, in particular countries less developed, such as societies face great income inequality and poor health and education systems. During our time as a part of the NDB, the UAE has committed to fostering cooperation with the member countries and have continued to support development projects in emerging economies around the world. Guided by our national foreign aid strategy, the UAE also strives to contribute to regional stability by providing the basic needs of local populations and supporting development projects. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your excellent answer for that. Now, my question for Director General Zhang. As a host country of NDB, how does China see the development impacts of the NDB that has been achieved today? Especially China is also one of the clients of the NDB. How are the NDB's projects in China selected? Because NDB is aimed to complement the existing multilateral institutions. So can you give us probably some example to show is the NDB's Chinese project to complement or compete with the existing institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ye. For your first question, as a founding member of NDB, China witnessed the bank from originally the concept formation, establishment, and the growing process to become a new member of the MDB family. So to summarize the 7 years development process of NDB, maybe I can put it simply in one word. NDB has well achieved its main goals set by its first general strategy and has become an important growing force of the global MDB family and also the important cooperation platform for the BRICS countries. And during this process, as the shareholder and also the host country, especially Shanghai as the host city, has offered best service and strong safeguards to the bank and honored our commitment. With regard to your second question, besides serving as the alternate director of China for the bank, I'm also in charge of the sovereign pipeline cooperation with NDB in MOF. Maybe I can give you some of my observations. The main factors we take into consideration when selecting the pipeline projects, we mainly take into account 3 points. First, is in line with our general national development strategy, and the projects we selected should be in the most needed area of the local government, which could safeguard that the social and economic effects of the project implementation could be enhanced. And second, taking into account of the NDB's institutional capacity and its specialties and advantages, we attach importance to mainly 2 aspects. First is we focused on traditional infrastructures such as transportation infrastructures, and also on the other hand, we focus on give more resources to the central and western areas of China, which are the less development areas in China, so that we could allocate resources to the most needed area and achieve our general goals. And the third factor we take into account is that we generally make a serious assessment on the borrower's financial conditions and also the debt limits, so that we should make it clear that the project, the borrower, must meet the necessary standards and the requirements of our lending projects, so that the project could be implemented in a safe and accountable manner. Maybe that's all my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Zhang. My next question for His Excellency Hanafi, Ambassador Hanafi. Actually, this question I would like probably other speakers also respond to, which is related to the green financing of the NDB, which is topic almost all of you have touched on. And green finance and sustainable infrastructure are also the brands that the NDB is trying to is trying to develop. And also NDB in its second general strategy specifically sets the goal, sets the target about the climate finance. That is 40% of its commitment in the second 5-year strategy period will be contributed to climate change. So I'm wondering, what is the standard of the climate financing? Because there's, for example, how do you see the coal fire plant, power plant, which is a controversial issue for the MDBs? And how do you see the NDBs financing in your country? So China actually has officially announced that it will stop financing coal fire power plant. So is that standard too high? Thank you.
It's a very good question, pertinent to the deliberations, the upcoming deliberations, of course, in the COP 27 and beyond, of course. Egypt relies on its energy needs mainly on fossil fuel. Coal does not play a major part in our energy, reserves, but we do have a substantial reliance on fossil fuel, of course, and coming to the how the MDBs can be, of course, can partner with us. We, as you may know, we have one of the biggest projects of solar power is in city of Aswan. It's called Benban project, a massive project of solar power, which has been co-financed by the World Bank. And of course, similar projects do of course have a very important contribution to our strategy of having 20% of and of course more as we go forward, 20% of our energy coming from renewable sources. We do rely on hydroelectric power in the south, of course, the high dam, and there is a very promising agenda to have infrastructure projects based on green technology and especially in the smart cities that are being built. We have more than 16 projects of smart cities, or more or less, all around Egypt, and is benefiting from this latest technology. And of course, within the strategy of NDP, the second strategy, 22-26, we see that a substantial allocation has been made for climate action, and this, of course, is very encouraging to all member states and partners to benefit from. And of course, we have to do our homework as countries, of course, to present a feasible study of the project, and we can benefit from the expertise offered by the MDBs and the NDP in particular, and of course we can have a homegrown solution, which, as previous speaker said, this is a peculiarity of the NDP, that it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's a customized approach, which is very encouraging, of course, to hear. Of course, there's also the technology transfer, as one of the honorable speakers mentioned. We have quite a promising startup ecosystem in Egypt and Africa. I've seen it in Nigeria. There is a very good, promising young people with the startup, preparedness, and this can be used as an added value to society and to capitalize on this, of course, both financing these projects and within our needs for benefiting from other member states that have technology capability of quite a remarkable scale. I mean, we can see from many members in BRICS and NDP that they have achieved a remarkable progress, and this is, of course, can be shared best practices in technology transfer, in digital transition, that can have a very good contribution to our development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hanafi, for your candid comment. Now, my question to VP Mestop, Mr. Mestop. I know that actually I have a long question list for you, but considering the time limit, if possible, can you also respond to the standard of the green financing adopted by the NDB? Is it a Chinese standard, BRICS standard, or any international standard? And after that, if possible, I would like to add a question, because as a CFO, I think NDB has adopted very strict financial discipline. For example, I noted that the NDB's equity to loan ratio is even higher than the World Bank. So it is targeted at AAA MDB's financial discipline. So, which is very essential for a new development bank, especially created by the emerging economies. But how do you see the balance between the NDB's financial sustainability and its development impact? Is there any conflict in that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. To start off with the green finance question, I mean, as you know, sustainability is really hard-coded in the very DNA of the bank. The bank's first capital market activity was a green bond way back in July 2016. We have also followed up, as you know, with multiple issuances in the sustainability and sustainability-linked space. We issued also in 2021, as you might know, the first SDG, Sustainable Development Goal bond in China, a 5 billion renminbi bond we issued under the UNDP taxonomy. I think what we will see going forward is much greater harmonization between the different jurisdictions, because what we have in the world today is a multiplicity of standards that have just mushroomed over the last number of years. But in order for the green bond market to go even to the next level, I think some more standardization is required. Green bonds, as you know, only started way back in 2008, 15 years ago, when the World Bank and the European Investment Bank issued the first bond. And since then, from a ground zero start, today it is a market of over $1.5 trillion. But it could still be scaled significantly more, because the size of the bond market, the fixed income market, is more than 100 times the size of the green bond market. On your question of the financial metrics, I think it's important to highlight that New Development Bank achieved a very high credit worthiness, very high credit rating, because of the very conservative financial metrics and prudent financial metrics that we put in place. We obviously do not have the AAA shareholders that many other MDBs have. So that has also put an encumbrance on us to ensure that our financial ratios, that our financial metrics are all in line with our desire to maintain the highest possible credit rating. As I mentioned earlier on, the aim of expanding our lending capacity without additional capital is really where the focus lies today. It's not about changing any of our metrics, our equity to loan ratio or our leverage ratio. We don't aim to change any of those, but we want to make sure we can use leverage better in the form of the crowding in principle. And this is why so many of the speakers today placed emphasis on this new catalytic role that multilateral banks intend to play in the future, moving away from us just financing projects to doing much more private sector mobilization, where we take the riskier parts of projects and then use that to bring in other institutional investors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President, for your further elaboration. Now let's come to Dr. Islam. Would you also like to take the question of the standard of green financing in terms of the NDB's engagement with your country? And also you mentioned the importance of infrastructure and people's livelihood. If possible, actually we see the MDB, all the MDBs, including the New Development Bank, is actually now there needs to be a firefighter to rescue the developing countries for the short-term liquidity shortage, but also to serve the long-term infrastructure development. So how do you see what would you expect the major development impact for the MDB in your country? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, again. Actually, NDB is poised to operate in the middle of a structural dictate, normative imperative. Like the banks, the Bretton Woods institutions, when they operated, there is no necessity of mitigation of carbon dioxide gas. With the Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals, the bank is actually poised, or is kind of pushed or forced to operate, taking these problems into consideration and prepare the policies accordingly. So that's why the bank has designated 40% of fund to the climate mitigation adaptation programs. But that also has to be, in my opinion, customized. Like Bangladesh, a country which has a contribution of 0.7% per capita, 0.7 greenhouse gas emission, which is 20 times lower than the global average, maybe 100 times lower than the America producing per capita. So for a country like Bangladesh, mitigating the greenhouse gas, how much justice is there? But we still have to find the projects which will contribute to the mitigation of carbon dioxide gas. And also whether we have the space, like for the solar energy project, we have a small country, so many people. So where do we have the space for solar energy? We don't have mountains in our country. Where do you produce hydropower? And there is no scope for wind power too. So we don't emit the greenhouse gas. At the same time, we don't also have the opportunities. So the funding for mitigation projects in countries like Bangladesh have to be customized with the local context. So that's why I was telling that maybe if NDB fund in these countries, like for the sustainable transportation or electric vehicle, which contribute in a way for the climate mitigation, also the river training, dredging, because of the climate change, we are one of the worst sufferer of climate change, Bangladesh. There is salinity intrusion in our lands, which is reducing the productivity and fertility of our land. So maybe for the dredging of the rivers, these kind of projects can be taken in Bangladesh and also customized in the context of other countries, because this 40% fund will go for climate mitigation projects. So this was the second aspect I was telling, to improve the livelihood of the people and also to save our earth. And the first one I was telling that to select the projects which are productive, like which have multiplying effect. Like we build a bridge which is generating other kinds of activities in our country. We have built a tunnel which is really productive because it will build it will help to for industrialization in the other part of the city. This kind of projects which have multiplying effects can actually enhance the impact of the NDB funding. So that was what actually I was. But my first emphasis will be on infrastructure. Second on will be in line with the normative imperatives, the structural dictate of funding in the climate mitigating projects. That will be second priority. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Islam. And instructed by the host, due to the time limit, actually we have been running too late. So I will not be able to ask you from the audience to ask questions. Really sorry about that. But thank you so much for staying until this time. It's too, actually it's already too late. So let me, and I'm not going to try to conclude for all the excellent speeches and comments, answering questions. But thank you again for the 6 excellent, distinguished speakers from on-site as well as from online. And thank you again. Thank you.
Excellencies, colleagues, it is a great honor for me to make these concluding remarks, and definitely it's a hard task for me because this workshop was rich of interesting ideas, and it's not been easy to summarize all these findings and conclusions. And let me first thank all the speakers and panelists for their insightful and valuable contribution to our workshop. And I would like to express a special gratitude to Minister Liu Kun on his participation and very, I should say, significant and interesting presentation, as well as for the Ministry of Finance of the People's Republics of China for their great support and active participation in organization workshop and its inclusion in BRICS track. My appreciation also goes to all the attended the workshop and help to make it such a successful event. As highlighted by Minister Liu Kun in his opening remarks, in the new strategic period, NDB should uphold its mission to solve AMDCs and facilitate its member countries to implement the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. NDB will continue its efforts to become a leading provider of solutions for infrastructure and development for emerging market economies and developing countries, and carry forward the BRICS spirit of openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation. General strategy approved by the Board of Governors provide a solid foundation for achieving of this ambitious goal. We are confident with the support of our shareholders and our partners, NDB will achieve significant results in the next 5 years and will bring its operational and investment capabilities to the new level. NDB, as has always been the case, will keep the development agenda and priorities of its members of its member countries at the core of its operations. Valuable inputs and suggestions expressed during workshop will no doubt help us better understand how the new general strategy can better contribute to the development agenda of our members and what further initiatives would be required from the bank. The workshop today certainly has been a useful platform on which guidance, opinions, suggestions were voiced. We are deeply thankful for all the contributions, and I am certain that takeaways from the workshop will further deepen our thinking and stimulate our work for the future implementation of the general strategy. Let me share my initial findings and takeaways from the presentation. First, I would like to put a special attention of wording by Minister Lu Kun and echoed by other participants, including Jonathan Voitzel, concerning the special role of NDB. Like it mentioned in Lu Kun's speech, that growing NDB follows multilateralism and respect diversity in development, and is growing into increasingly important force in promoting reform of the global governance system. This is, and it's echoed by Jonathan Voitzel and Vice Minister of Finance Wang Dongwei, saying that NDB must play a very important role in this promoting voice of emerging market economies. So I think that it's a real task for NDB and a real challenge, both by, I should say, by formal way to take certain important position, and then by substance. As for the few coming years, let me express my findings during my last trip to the member countries, that they will be very happy to support the promotion of NDB within the G20 process. We have very unique situation for coming 3 years, but then our member countries, one by one, to be the chair. First India, then Brazil, then South Africa. And we definitely must use these good opportunities to fulfill this task. The other issue mentioned by all the participants, and it's very important, this is strategic task, and identify and underline a lot of times by our president, Troika, the expansion of membership. And I do want to, I do hope that the coming year, NDB will definitely make a further very important steps in this direction, and definitely we can feel that a lot of countries express their interest in NDB membership, and some of them already made this interest more practical. And let me pay special attention in the same time. The BRICS expansion, BRICS itself expansion, also put on the agenda. And as it was mentioned by Minister Lu Kun, that our expansion must be in concert with the BRICS expansion. This is very interesting wording. I think we must take it up. At the same time, as a second, I should say, part of these takeaways, I should say that it's very interesting that most of our partners, colleagues from the Ministry of Finance, Vice Minister, our old friend, Vice President of Exim Bank, Jan Wei Tsai, Deputy DG Jambo, our friend from Brazil, President of BNDES, all of them mentioned that we need to develop further NDB capacity with the capacity to use new instruments and more sophisticated market instruments for the further development of our operations. It's a great task, definitely. And this is, I think that, and my peer colleagues, both Neil and others, as well as the President, Troika, we share the same views that for the successful implementation of the future of the next strategy, it's a target for mobilization, for green finance, for attracting private money. We need definitely to follow this line, to develop the line of the instruments, modern instruments, and for NDB. And the third matter I would like to mention in particular, like stressed by President Trujillo, concerning the improvement of and further develop of NDB governance system. Definitely, this is in line with ESG. Let's say G means governance. I think this is very important, and we definitely need to be prepared to fulfill, prepared internally to fulfill that I should say, enormous task we are facing, both because of recent quite complicated environment and by the size of the, I should say, projects and size of portfolio we need to implement in coming years and to fulfill these strategy targets, both by to provide 40% for climate finance, 30% for mobilization. It's quite a great target. And let me, in the end of this intervention, share my, I should say, findings, because I'm happy to report that during last 2 months, I managed to visit 4 member countries, South Africa, Russia, India, and Emirates. So I had very good meetings with the ministers, vice ministers, our important shareholders, and others. And I can say, frankly, that most of the ideas and most of the proposals expressed today during workshop definitely 100% shared by our colleagues in South Africa, Russia, and India and Emirates. And I feel that our member countries they definitely would like to see these sustainable development ideas as a core of NDB operations. And I identify huge potential with member countries to be innovative and to present to NDB quite innovative and sophisticated green finance and energy transition project. Starting from South Africa, it's one very interesting project was presented for methane plant to produce liquid gas, and then as a sideline production produce of helium. So, but it was very interesting, high-tech project. Even in Russia, in spite of all these problems, recent problems, this ASG still remains one of the top priorities in the country agenda. The same in India. Because of this high speed of economic growth, I can say frankly, echoed by our friend from Brazil, president of BNDES, that maybe we need to look very carefully on this quite specific sector for sustainable development. I mean, social and cultural, social infrastructure project. I think those projects can provide very quick social impact and definitely by the level of inclusiveness, those types of the project, bankable, to be supported by market, could be one of the most interesting opportunities for NDB. And also I can say that our member countries, all of them, 4, ready to support NDB innovations and broad-minded approach to funding. We identify a lot of opportunities, like we discussed today and mentioned in particular by our Chinese colleagues, that we need to implement next steps to develop NDB capacity. And like my colleague VP Anil mentioned, we definitely need to develop our capacity in local currency finance. It's most important, because if you really want to have good private project, non-sovereign project in the member country, you need to provide local currency finance. And we have definitely, we identified a lot of new opportunities for local currency finance in India. We can do good finance, including USD finance, with local financial institution in Russia. It's definitely there, and especially we have very productive meetings within Finance Ministry of Emirates. I'm happy to see Ambassador of Emirates here. And let me say that I feel that very, very cooperative support from the Emirates officials, Vice Minister and DG. They're happy to support NDB entering into Emirates market, the financial market. So that's my initial findings on and outcomes of this workshop. Thank you very much again, and we'll be happy to see you in any other future opportunities. Thank you.